News Radio 700 WLW.
It must have been a raucous night at the Forest Hills School Board meeting. Oh, it sounds that way. Forest Hills requires masks in classrooms. For elementary school students, optional masks for high school students, optional masks for junior high and high schoolers. Instructional settings will also require masking for elementary school students. About 50 parents showed up last night, according to the Inquirer. Not many of them wore masks. This all played out at the Nagle Middle School. One board member couldn't figure out how to vote, so there was a little bit of entertainment at that level. Multiple interruptions from the crowd, but that's what happened last night as Forest Hills now requires masks in classrooms for elementary students, optional masks for high schoolers. This as the science of whether or not elementary and high school students really need masks. It is all over the map. Let no one tell you that the science comes down specifically and without concern and without any kind of discussion one way or the other, because it simply does not. It is all over the map. But now Forest Hills joins Cincinnati Public Schools and Indian Hill and Mount Healthy in Wyoming. All of those school districts are requiring masking for their students this fall. And then there's a whole laundry list of local school districts that are recommending masking, but not making them a mandate. This is basically following the direction of the governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, who said that he really can't mandate masks because he really doesn't think there's an appetite for it in the state of Ohio. Meanwhile, Governor Beshear in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, as we talked about yesterday, said that all children 2 years and older have to wear masks when they are at daycare centers or schools. Can you imagine a 2-year-old being forced to wear a mask? 2-year-olds, if you've ever had children, do not want to be forced to do anything. My guess is most of the time, if you work in a daycare center in Kentucky and you have a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, you are going to spend an inordinate amount, if not all of your time, telling the child to keep the mask on his or her face. That will consume your job the entire time that you are there on the job on that particular day. Meanwhile, more schools are defying state governments to impose these mask mandates. Schools in Florida, Texas, Arizona, South Carolina, Utah, Iowa, and Oklahoma are legally prohibited from imposing mask mandates either by state law or governor's executive orders. A rash of lawsuits now have popped up against several of these state school bans. 3 in Florida, 2 in Texas. A state court in Arkansas has already issued a preliminary injunction temporarily invalidating that state's mask mandate. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott voted yesterday to take any school or local government that defies his executive order barring mask mandates to court after he challenged a Dallas mask order that in essence overturned what he said he wants, which is no mandatory masking in Texas classrooms. In fact, his state attorney general, a man by the name of Ken Paxton, petitioned the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in an attempt to block a district judge ruling that allowed the state's second largest school district, the one in Dallas, to require masks. This is all headed for the classroom. Isn't it amazing? We have seemingly a pandemic, seemingly endless lawsuits, and children caught in the middle. Where is this going? And can governors actually block funding for schools that do not adhere to that governor's order to ban masks in classrooms? Because that is what both Ron DeSantis in Florida and Greg Abbott in Texas are threatening. Standing by is somebody that knows the law inside and out. In fact, he's argued before the Supreme Court of these United States. In fact, Quentin Brogdon is a fellow in the invitation-only International Academy of Trial Lawyers, a fellow in the invitation-only American College of Trial Lawyers, and a fellow in the invitation-only International Society of Barristers. This guy has been invited to more legal gatherings than F. Lee Bailey. But he has some time to give us here today on 700 WLW to talk about this, because it may affect what your child may have to do in terms of a mask or no mask. And possibly, quite possibly, some of these school systems will be back on their heels or up on their toes. Quentin Brogdon, how are you on this glorious Thursday?
Hello, Ken. How are you?
I'm doing well. Okay, so we've got a lot going on here. Schools in Florida, Texas, Arizona, South Carolina, Utah, Iowa, Oklahoma are legally prohibited from imposing mask mandates by their governors. The governor here in Ohio says he can't mandate masks to be worn in classrooms because, and this is his words, the public has no appetite for it at this time. And just to our south, and here in the coverage area, in Kentucky, the governor there is mandating masks for everyone over the age of 2 that goes into either a child care or a school facility. There is great consternation about this on both sides of the argument, as I'm sure you know. I'm just wondering where the legality for all of this comes down, knowing, of course, that we are not necessarily a democracy. We're a republic, and 50 states all have their own way of doing things. Where are we legally on this, in your opinion?
Well, you hit the nail on the head, Ken. This is playing out in multiple states, primarily Florida and Texas, but yes, your state and Kentucky and Arizona, South Carolina, Utah, Iowa, Oklahoma, and it really pits governors in many cases against local governing authorities who are in hotspots, or at least perceive themselves to be in places that may be on the verge of becoming hotspots. And so, unfortunately, this whole debate has gotten so politicized. You can't mention masks without one party or the other weighing in, either strongly for or strongly against. But I think you've got some governors, some who are in Texas and Florida, for example, on the short list to run as presidential candidates in the next race, who are trying to, cynics would say, conservative each other, and are tying the hands of these local authorities. And then you've got legitimate arguments on the behalf of parents and others who maybe their students have medical conditions, or it's just a perception, at least, that this is a freedom issue, that I should be able to decide whether I or my children wear masks. And then you get into, you ask about legality. It really depends upon the state and what powers each state gives their governor. Governors have, the highest ranking, obviously, official in each state, but local authorities are charged with the health, safety, and welfare, particularly in school districts. You've got your school district, independent school districts in many cases, making decisions based on what they perceive, at least, to be the best interest of the children. So there's no black or white answer here.
Yeah. I know in Texas, Abbott has said that if his executive order is not adhered to, it's punishable to a fine up to $1,000 against schools or government officials to impose the mandate. That certainly will wind up in several courts of law. I'm just wondering, knowing how fickle judges, let alone juries, but certainly judges can be, I'm just wondering if you think that would hold water in Texas.
Well, we've already had in Dallas, Texas, a judge weigh in and say that the governor's mask mandate ban cannot be enforced because of the spike in Delta variant cases, in particular in Dallas, where, as far as pediatric beds, I think there are just a handful in the whole county that Dallas is in that are open at the moment. So this Delta variant of COVID has really put our healthcare system under enormous strain. So regardless of where you fall on the mask mandate debate, there is an argument to be made that we are in emergency, extraordinary times, and extraordinary measures are needed. On the other hand, people are fatigued with these mask mandates, and for many people, it's a freedom issue and a choice issue. I should be able to decide for myself and my children whether we wear masks.
Where does my freedom leave off, and my effect on you begins. I think that's really where all of this, I guess, will be argued and decided, right?
That's right. You can always make a case in favor of freedom, but when, the limits on that in other contexts, not just with respect to masks, maybe I feel it's my freedom to drink and then get behind the wheel of a car, but if I'm endangering other motorists on the road, the criminal laws say that's too much freedom for me, and although I may want to drink and drive, I can't be allowed to do that. So certainly there are limits on all of our freedom. The tricky question is, where exactly do you draw those lines?
Yeah. DeSantis is threatening to withhold salaries from superintendents or school board members that violate his mandate. Apparently, he's got some sort of law he can thread the needle on. I don't know. I don't live in Florida. But I'm just wondering, I mean, he even has in his own county, the county is Leon County in Florida, they've kind of flown in his face and they say, no, wait a minute, we're going to impose a mask mandate. I mean, can a governor really withhold funds from superintendents and school systems? That seems a bit drastic.
That's going to be tested in court, most definitely. And the governors who have imposed these mandates now face a question. How serious are they? Are they really going to do what they've threatened to do? Because it seems day by day, even today versus, say, 4 or 5 days ago, the level of dire need and the level of emergencies and the level of, filled hospital beds and ICUs in counties in Florida and Texas and elsewhere are reaching a level that even if you could have made the argument 5 days ago that, it wasn't necessarily justified, it's harder to make that argument now. I'm not saying it cannot be made. It's just harder now because with each passing day, our healthcare system is getting more and more strained.
Yeah. But I guess, and you know this far better than I do, you can find a judge anywhere to tell the public what you want them to tell you. It may be a little bit more difficult in Florida, which is a little bit more purple in some of these metro areas than what it is in Texas. But my guess is what occurred in the Dallas school system, which you just talked about, that's got to be going to the Texas Supreme Court, right?
Yeah, no doubt these decisions will be appealed. And, I think judges, and I know the ones in Dallas firsthand, they really try to do what is right. You have a balancing issue of various factors that you're weighing, and you can have two judges who are each trying to do the right thing, but they arrive at different places, not necessarily because of any political agenda. So these things are, all of these issues are in a territory that normally we don't traverse in, and some of this law is being decided, a lot of this law is being decided as we go. Yeah. I mean, some of these lower court judges are looking for guidance.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing? We have, in essence, a pandemic, and we have medicine versus legal system with kids caught in the middle. It's kind of an amazing situation, isn't it?
It is, and it's a shame that the children are caught. Even a few months ago, it seemed as though the threat had passed. Some predicted it had not, but many felt it had, and that we would have a normal school year, and that at least largely due to the vaccines and other things that are going on, that we wouldn't still be fretting about COVID and worried about sending our children off to school. But that's exactly where we are now. This has reared its ugly head, and probably in the fall, and I'm not a medical person, needless to say, but based on everything I hear and read, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better when the weather starts getting cold.
Unbelievable. Quentin Brogdon, always great catching up with you. Thank you so much for your time, and we will talk down the road, I'm sure. Stay well.
Stay well, Ken. Take care.